Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 8 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, March 13th, 2012, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, March 9th, 2012, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Town Library, the Town Clerk, the Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Vince, could you do a roll call?
Mr. Matesic?
Here.
Mr. Finn?
Here.
Ms. Carey?
Here.
Mrs. Clancy?
Here.
Mr. Friedman?
Here.
Ms. Kerstadt?
Here.
Mrs. Lights?
Here.
Mr. Slater?
Here.
Mrs. Olig?
Here now.
Here.
That's an entrance.
Better late than never. Better late than never.
Could hear the water.
All right. Dave, you want to lead us in flag salute?
Sure. Please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Announcements. Start over here.
Okay, yes, budget information. Just a reminder that all of the presentations at board meetings of the 2012-2013 budget are posted on the district website, and hopefully Kevin's putting the scroll under here, but I'll say it anyway, www.westfieldnewjersey.k12.org/budget1213. Updates to the site are posted on a regular basis. Summaries of the presentations also are included in the superintendent's synopsis of meetings at the same website/synopsis.
Thank you.
Do you have anything?
Jane?
Nope. Okay.
I do. This is about athletics. The New Jersey Devils hockey team once again sponsored their High School Player of the Month program. Each month, December through February, 7 student athletes from throughout the state are selected as recipients of the award. Winners are based on nominations received from varsity ice hockey coaches throughout the state and voted on by local media. We are pleased to announce that sophomore Dane Huber was selected as one of the winners for the month of February. He received 2 tickets to a Devils game, a plaque presented by a Devils player, and dinner at the Prudential Center, compliments of the Devils. Congratulations to Dane.
Great. Gretchen, anything down your end?
I do not.
Nothing. More?
No, sir.
Roseanne?
We are thrilled to announce the achievements of our students as we regularly do at our meetings. We also wanted to take a moment to highlight some significant achievements of our staff. Sandy Mamery, our athletic supervisor, was invited by the NJSIAA to speak at a one-day workshop held at the organization's state headquarters. She spoke about the challenges and opportunities of a first-year athletic director. Schools from throughout New Jersey were in attendance. Additionally, our athletic trainer, Chris Flores, presented at the state conference of the Athletic Training Society of New Jersey. He received an award for his dedication to the education of future athletic trainers. A 5th grade teacher at McKinley School, Dana Passanante, wrote a book entitled New Jersey Ask 5, Language Arts Literacy, which was published by the Research and Education Association. Dana's book is a teacher's aid for test preparation of the New Jersey Ask Language Arts Literacy test. Dana is a product of the Westfield High School and lastly, the Westfield Public School District's New Teacher Institute is featured in an article in the current issue of School Leader magazine, the publication of the New Jersey School Boards Association. The magazine is sent to superintendents and school board members throughout the state.
Thank you. Ann?
And under Fine Arts, congratulations to the Westfield High School and Roosevelt Intermediate School students selected for regional and state honors. At Roosevelt, Isabella Gelfand and Katie Trutch were selected in the soprano 2 section for regional honors. At Edison Intermediate School, 7th grader Amy Liang made Region 2 Intermediate Symphony Orchestra. Alex Gold and Dale Bayard made Region 2 band performing on trumpet. At Westfield High School, 7 students were accepted into the 2012 Region 2 Mixed and Women's Choruses. Those selected for the mixed chorus were Mary Barber, Elizabeth Griesmer, Michael Kirkland, Matt Lind, and Jeffrey Coe. Megan Pena and Melanie Schneider were selected for the women's chorus. 5 Westfield High School students were selected for Region 2 band ensembles and 2 for All-State. They are Jeff Marino, who will perform in orchestra for both Region 2 and All-State, Clayton Bayard in symphonic band for Region 2 and All-State, Chris Walsh and David Virchek, symphonic band for Region 2, and John Clancy, who I see sitting here with us tonight, for Region 2 percussion ensemble. Congratulations. And just a reminder, Edison Intermediate School will be performing Cinderella on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, March 15th, 16th, and 17th at 7:30 p.m. Congratulations to everyone.
Yes, and speaking of Edison Intermediate School, congratulations to Alan Fang, an 8th grader at Edison, whose artwork was selected to represent Union County at the State Youth Art Month festivities. Alan's artwork is on display at the State House in Trenton with a small number of other pieces created by Union County students. The closing reception will be on March 30th at the State House.
And have an announcement regarding unused snow days. The district calendar indicates that there are 3 specific dates designated as give-back days if snow days are not needed. So due to the lack of snow, which we welcome this year, and the mild weather that we're experiencing, tonight I'm announcing that schools will be closed for students and teachers the day after Easter, which is Monday, April 9th. I see smiles in the audience. And the Friday of Memorial Weekend, which is Friday, May 25th. It is too soon to return the last of the snow days, because that one's scheduled for the last day of school. And between now and then, we certainly, unbelievably, might have a snowstorm, or could also have a day of unbearable heat that might make it necessary to close school. So we're not returning that 3rd day at this point, but we are returning those 2 days, and we'll be sending notification to all parents, staff, and the students will get that notification as well.
Thank you. The next Board of Ed meeting will be Tuesday, March 20th at 8 p.m., held at 302 Elm Street. We'll continue our discussion of the 2012-2013 budget, and of course, we welcome the public to attend. One last, yet another very special announcement. I'll use the podium. This evening, we are honoring the Westfield High School varsity bowling team, the 2012 state sectional champions. Congratulations. In addition to winning the North 2 Group 4 sectional, you competed in the team event for the NJS IAA state championship, placing 6th out of 10 teams in Group 4. Your team saw many individual achievements, including the qualification of Lucas Cruz and Eric Saunders for the Union County Individual Tournament. The tournament consisted of the top 16 bowlers from school districts throughout Union County. Lucas Cruz also represented the Westfield High School bowling team in the NJS IAA State Bowling Championships, competing against 50 of the top bowlers in the state and reaching the state final championship. We are proud of all the team members and their coach, Ralph Corey. We give a round of applause for the team. As I call your name, if you'd come up and accept, please, a certificate of achievement from the Westfield School Board. Teresa Carlino. Congratulations. Great job. Lucas Cruz. He's not here tonight. Adam Firestone also could not attend tonight. Taylor Friss unfortunately could not attend. Benjamin Ritter unfortunately could not attend. Sebastian Roja. Congratulations. Eric Saunders. Congratulations. Great job. And Ralph Corey, the Board of Education congratulates the Westfield High School varsity bowling team coach. Terrific job. Feel free to say a few words if you'd like.
I would like to thank Dr. Dolan and the entire Board of Education for honoring the bowling team tonight. I would also like to congratulate the coaches and athletes of the boys and girls swimming team for winning the state champions this season as well. I'd like to thank Sandy Mamery for giving me the opportunity as a first-year teacher here in the Westfield School District to have an opportunity to coach these fine athletes. I was very excited to take over a successful program, and as far as expectations this season, I wanted to basically continue that tradition and that pride in the bowling program. As we got closer to the end of the season, I felt that we had something very special here with the athletes, and I had a conversation in Sandy's office and said, you know, if we can all come together, I think we can win the sectionals. Well, as you know, we did such that, and I want to thank my athletes as well, sitting in the seats and standing here beside me, for a great first season. And I appreciate you welcoming me, and I had an incredible first season. Thank you, congratulations to you all, and I look forward for more success next year. Thank you to the Board of Education again tonight.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
And it's certainly a great sign, I think, that not only do we have the students who were being celebrated tonight, but we have team members who made sure they came out tonight to support. And I want to thank the team members for doing that. It's a sign of a good team.
All right. At this point, we'll recognize the public for agenda items only. Seeing no one come to the podium, we'll move to superintendent's reports. Okay?
And we have quite a few superintendent reports this evening, but we're going to start with an important one. All of them are important this evening. First one has to do with the district goals. And this year, we happen to have 3 district goals. One deals with respect. One deals with continuing the success at Westfield High School despite the increasing enrollment, or in light of the increasing enrollment. And one has to do with STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. All of the goals are based on the mission of the Westfield Public Schools. The mission is something that has been crafted a few times by the members of the community over a number of years. And based on feedback from the community and the approval of the board, the current mission statement of Westfield Schools, which guides all of our work, is the Westfield Public School District, in cooperation with family and community, prepares all students to reach their highest potential and to become productive, well-balanced, and responsible citizens in a global society through educational programs that respect individual differences and diversity. So again, all of the goals that were chosen for this year by the Board of Education are based and emanate from that mission statement and the strategic plan. So the first goal deals with respect. And this was one for people who regularly watch our Board of Education meetings or attend them. Anyone would know we've done quite a bit of work regarding this. The actual goal was written as follows: to establish, communicate, and model standards for respect and responsibility at all levels. And as I've said, I think before at this table, this goal, I think, becomes almost more and more important because our young people are often exposed to a lot in our culture that doesn't teach them respect, that doesn't model respect. that teaches them that if you disagree with someone, it's okay to call them a name, or to decide you don't like someone because you may disagree on one topic. Too often, I think our students are learning that, so the schools are working with the parents and the community to make sure that we're teaching that respect that really is necessary. So we've taken a number of steps. One of the first things we did was work towards developing a policy which would address the New Jersey's legislation on anti-bullying. We did quite a bit of work of that over a number of months. We asked for and received feedback from the community and developed a policy that both met the needs of the state but also reflected our interest in Westfield. So that policy was adopted, and then as we were doing that, we started the training to make sure that everyone understood the new requirements for anti-bullying law and policy, and also had recent training in what is bullying, how do you identify bullying, how do you promote a positive climate to limit or diminish bullying incidents, and how do you address it when there is a problem that's identified. That training included everyone at this table. The Board of Education received training, all the administrators in the district, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the secretaries, everyone, substitutes, coaches. We spent a great deal of time making sure that everyone understood it. We also, in the each school established a school safety team, and they are a group that meets to monitor incidents of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, to look and assess what are we doing to promote a positive climate, and are we doing that effectively, and to survey how, in general, the climate in the building is. And the school safety teams have been working in their buildings this year. We also worked hard to develop a revised code of conduct. In this, we also reached out to the community. And the policy committee of the board certainly did a lot of work looking at what was established in other districts, what we liked and didn't like about what existed in other districts, what our previous code of conduct was. But then we established a group which represented just about every aspect of our community, from representatives from the community who didn't have children, from parents, from staff members, from administrators, and from students, all of whom worked quite hard to determine what is the code of conduct specific to our students in Westfield. Once that was then presented to the policy committee of the board and then the full board and approved by the full board, it was then time to disseminate that so that all students and parents would understand what was expected of students. We also continue to review strategies in our schools at different levels for different age students for problem solving and social decision making. So if you do have a problem with someone you're interacting with, what are appropriate methods to deal with that? You're going to have disagreements with people. What is appropriate and what is not acceptable? That training has started, that work has started, but it continues. And we not only held dozens of meetings for parents. Parents were very interested in this topic, and we had large turnouts and had dozens of meetings throughout the course of the year. But parents can't always make meetings, whether we offer them during the day or at night. People can be busy. So we also provided online resources so that parents, when they came across a situation, would have support, etc. And we continue to work to incorporate respect in all aspects of the school day, whether we're deciding what to promote, whether we're deciding how we're dealing with discipline, whether we're deciding what assemblies people are seeing. We look for every opportunity, and we'll continue to promote respect in all aspects of what we do in our schools. The second goal I'm talking about tonight says that we are going to ensure the continued success of Westfield High School throughout a period of growing enrollment over the next 4 years. We certainly never want to wait until a larger number in a given class arrive at a door. We want to take steps along the way to prepare for that. So we've been monitoring enrollment and talked about it at this table and noticed a bit of a change in our patterns for the transition from 8th grade enrollment to 9th grade enrollment. And so we have hired a demographer who's looking at those numbers and who is going to be presenting a report to the board in the near future regarding that. We have our numbers what we believe they're going to be, but we want to make sure that our projections are accurate. So we also just tried to take advantage of every opportunity to get ready for the large enrollment as we continue to grow. So when we received additional state money last summer, one of the things we did was install a new computer lab in the high school with up-to-date computers that would work effectively and quickly. We also have worked to purchase new lockers that make more efficient use of space, and also tables and chairs for cafeteria. And we also have plans for purchasing more lockers going forward, so that again we gradually prepare the facilities to be able to accept a larger number of students. I think it was last board meeting, we had a presentation on the community efforts to redo the fitness center at the high school. We greatly appreciate all the efforts that have been done, and the board is going to talk about that a little bit more tonight. But that certainly has also helped because we not only have up-to-date equipment, but we have more equipment than has been available for our students. And that equipment is used not just for our students on teams, but it's used for our physical education program. So again, that's helping to build the capacity of our facility at the high school. We've reviewed the special education support models at the high school. We've looked at what some other districts and high schools who are quite like our high school, what they're doing. And as IEPs are being redone for next year, we're looking at a model that's somewhat different, which we believe is going to support the students more effectively and also be efficient for the high school as well. We have been researching an additional world language program to add, and we had a survey that was sent to both parents and parents and students to get a sense of that. And we've also been looking at STEM course offerings that we hope to be able to add going forward. We're collaborating with town traffic engineer to address parking and safety issues at the high school as well. And as we prepare for next year, even next year we'll see a slight increase is our prediction at the high school, but not a particularly large one. So in the budget for next year, I have included 2 teaching positions at the high school and also a counseling position so that we continue to grow. You know, when we talk about staffing at the elementary level, it's pretty easy. You hire one teacher and they do a new 3rd grade section or whatever. It's not quite the same in the high school. The high school teachers teach by periods, so it may be 2 full-time teachers, but those periods will be divvied up probably between or among different departments at the high school. One department might need 2 extra periods, one might need 1, one might need another 2, and so we'll have additional classes as needed based on the course selections done by students and also by the master schedule as it's developed. So, but we do have additional staffing in the budget for next year. It's actually on the agenda tonight to add a girls' golf team for this spring season, which will provide some additional spaces for students for extracurricular activities. And we just heard also, I believe that was last week, about how the Theater Guild is working and trying to find additional opportunities for our students interested in fine arts. And so we're very thankful that they're doing that because that allows more students to participate in different ways. And the third goal is STEM. The specific wording was to develop increased opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. So we're taking this goal to heart. We've been working quite hard on it and trying to make ourselves look at things a little differently. So one way we're doing that is we're going to leave the PowerPoint now, and we're going to move to a different type of presentation software. And it's going to look a little different, not that different actually, but it's just a little different. But we're trying, as we work on STEM, to try to model using effective technology in different ways and trying to integrate different curricula, different fields of study, which is one of the aspects of STEM. So here's our goal, and one of the reasons why we want to focus on STEM is Westfield is only part of a broad global society at this point. We have to make sure our students are fully prepared for that. And as stated by the director of National Science Foundation, more and more, all of our students, not just the people who want to grow up to be scientists or engineers, everyone is going to need more information in that because the world going forward is a bit different. We need to all have more understanding and knowledge in science, technology, engineering, and math just because it's what the future brings. So we have to make sure all of our students, not just our people who are going on to college and careers in the STEM areas, but all of our students are more fluent in the STEM areas. So what we decided to do first is look at what are we doing already. And one of the, we picked one example of how we really have a lot of the elements of STEM already. When we have a science class, technology is infused in it. Mathematics, you can't pretend you can do science without mathematics. It certainly doesn't work. We started by having a committee developed, the Westfield STEM Committee, which has representatives from different areas, different teachers, administrators, supervisors, and looking at what are we doing now that's good that we can build on, and where are our gaps where we need to continue to build. So I'd like to show a video of one example of what we're doing now.
I'm Carol Wank, and I teach chemistry at Westfield High School. In the lab that we did the other day, we performed an exothermic and an endothermic process. My students took calcium chloride and they mixed it in with distilled water, and then they also took ammonium nitrate and mixed it in with distilled water. And they monitored the temperature using Pasco computerized data collection equipment. The Pasco equipment is fantastic. We were only using the temperature sensor for this lab, but there are a whole variety of sensors that you can use. There's a black box that hooks up to a laptop computer, and the sensor gets plugged into that black box, and all the data is sent to the computer. So the wonderful thing in that lab is that we were collecting data every half a second. Data was automatically graphed for them, so they could spend their time analyzing the data instead of mechanically working with the data. I think it was a very positive response. I know I asked all my classes the next day how they thought it went, and they were very much in favor of it and are looking forward to using it next time. You may have noticed that the laptops were a little bit slow when we were using them. I think those laptops are about 9 years old. So we're using them, but we really struggle to use them. I attended the science convention this past year and went to a program at the science convention where they talked about hooking up those Pasco-like sensors with iPads and how you can use that type of equipment in labs. And so I think it would be fantastic if we could use more current technology in some of our laboratory settings. And so it brings science into their everyday life, again, not just something that we do in the classroom.
We actually have Mrs. Wank in the audience here. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it. And thank you for explaining that so well. So as you can see, one of the things we found as we talked at our STEM table with the various teachers and supervisors was we had a lot of ideas as to what to do, but without the technology to support that, we were somewhat limited. So the fact that we've just done so much work and have prepared a technology initiative going forward is really going to help our STEM efforts going forward. So it really, the two dovetail very, very well. We also looked at, not there yet, we actually stayed there and looked at a number of other options that were available in our district now. Some clubs that really capture the imagination of students, and we want to build on that. Some of the ones, for example, the robotics club, the rocket car club, 2 new science clubs that were started this year at intermediate levels. That's a great way for some students to participate, and again, they have the opportunity to just find that spark and to find something that speaks to them and may take them further as they go forward. The competitions, a lot of the competitions it's another great opportunity. Science Olympiad we do at both intermediate and high school level, and a number of different math competitions. And it's just so wonderful to see the same enthusiasm you can see at an athletic event. It is, education is what I love. I love it when I see kids just cheering about who got the right answers in math or science or any other academic area. So we want to promote those a bit more and have more students involved in that. And as some of the board members might remember, the robotics club last year at Edison School actually won an award from NASA, and what a great experience for those students. And we have students this year working on LEGO's robotics programs, and they're engaged as well this year. Whether they win the competition or not, they're learning quite a bit. So those are some of the things that are already in place, but what do we do to make our program stronger? And again, some suggestions. As we've been working, we've read what some other districts are doing. One of the things we noticed that a lot of the other districts, they're only doing things for small groups, and I've talked about that a little bit, but we also want to broaden it. One of the things we're looking at and looking for ideas for is how do we really introduce it at the elementary level so more students have that interest in becoming involved in programs that we offer. So we're looking for ways to introduce that more at the intermediate level, elementary level. In the meantime, we have found 2 districts who are also working on STEM as well, Summit and New Milford, and we're working with them. I neglected to mention before that the Westfield STEM Committee is working using Edmodo, which is a social media tool for educators, and we're using that to try to share information, to post information that teachers can access. We have our own community on there, and we are also linking with New Milford, and we will be linking with Summit regarding that as well, so that information can be shared across districts as well. We also, we already have some opportunities in the district where we have students who can reach out and work with scientists. New Jersey is such a great place for that, between universities and even pharmaceuticals. So can we take advantage of that? Because we're never going to be able to buy all the equipment we want to do some of the work that students can be exposed to. So we have one example of what is already in place in the district. And actually, Ms. Hoteling is also in the audience, and we're going to now watch a video about a program that did take place this year, and it was in association with Princeton University.
My name is Christy Hoteling, and I teach 8th grade gifted talented biology at Edison Intermediate School. I did a couple of internships at Princeton, and through those programs I was able to get outreach equipment, and I'm pretty close now to Dr. Slinsky, who came into the classroom and worked with the students. That's where I got equipment. When you came by, we were isolating DNA, genomic DNA, from grocery store foods. So essentially from things like Cheez-Its and Teddy Grahams, and some kids tested organic products to see if they were genetically modified. It takes a lot of equipment, first of all. The kids have to use a microfuge, which spins at about 10,000 RPM, which is incredibly fast. You have to balance it very well. That's a really expensive, nice piece of equipment that I wish I had. We also used a water bath. They like the micropipettes a lot. They are actually amazingly expensive. They pipette really tiny volumes of liquid, so tiny, like microliters. So the students really got to know how to use those, which is a huge skill for anybody who's a scientist in any lab. It's the kind of lab that basically I didn't do till I was in college. I don't think most students do, even in college necessarily, unless they're working in a laboratory. So it was definitely a really exciting lab. I think that it really was relevant because we talked a lot about genetically modified organisms, which is a huge issue, especially in Europe. One of the things the students are also doing is making PowerPoints and discussing both sides of the issue as well as the lab they did. In terms of computers, we were in the library doing the PowerPoints in there. It'd be great to be able to just do that in the classroom, and the students would be able to work at the tables. And it's exciting with technology. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. And with a lab like this, I would not be able to do anything like this if it weren't for the technology that I had.
Thank you. And so, obviously, what a marvelous experience, and you could see those students, how engaged they were. Mr. Panera, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, has been reaching out to other universities to look for other programs that might be appropriate. So far, we have some interest from Rutgers University, both in the area of science and also in the area of computer science. So we're looking to form a few more partnerships that can benefit our students going forward. We're also doing things as we're reviewing our curriculum, be that the K-5 math curriculum that we've already presented to the board, or the intermediate science curriculum, which is now working its way through the curriculum development process. We're keeping an eye on the concepts of STEM that are important, the integration of the different subject areas, and the problem-based learning as it's appropriate. We also were able to approve a new course for 8th grade students, an optional course for 8th grade students. That's robotics. We've actually been trying to do that for quite a while, and it's a personal victory that we finally have it. And we already know students are excited about signing up for that for September. We are looking for ways to increase that and offer something in the high school which is more advanced than that. We've been looking into that. And we continue, we've also been successful under resources. I already mentioned the importance of the technology initiative to support STEM efforts. We are trying to develop more of a, having individuals who are interested in this concept have a 24/7 idea exchange, the collaborative media. We were successful in receiving a grant in Engineering by Design for STEM. We have a teacher who is going to be participating starting this summer in a special STEM education program in Virginia Tech. Stevens Institute of Technology is also offering some programs we're looking at. And we also have members of our Westfield STEM committee who are involved in the Garden State STEM Coalition, which is just starting and focusing on opportunities specifically for women and young girls. Okay. So a lot of things in place, but I have to say this is one where we have a lot of people in this district excited about this at this point. And what we can't quite wait for is what else is to come. There are so many opportunities out there right now, and we're trying to coordinate them, and we're trying to continue to move forward on some very specific topics.
Great. Questions, comments?
Just a clarification, the new robotics course is at both Edison and Roosevelt?
That's correct. It's at both intermediate schools, yes. And again, we were fortunate some of the money, the additional money that we received from the state in the summer, I had asked at that point, I knew we were trying to get that class in place, so some of the money from that additional state aid is being used to purchase the materials necessary to run a robotics course.
The STEM initiative is really exciting and very timely with everything that's going on in the world. And what are our plans to add courses to the high school? Like, do we see anything happening this September, or will it probably be another year?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to have any new formal courses for this year. We're looking to see if there's another way to introduce something for next year, whether it might, we're not sure yet, so it's still a work in progress, but whether that's something like an independent study or, you know, the collaboration with the universities is their way to. Some other high schools have figured out a way to do that, but not in a formal course. So it's a possibility, but it won't be a formal course in the course of studies.
But for the next September, I mean, is that our goal, to add courses to the high school, I guess?
Right, yes, we
Question?
have been talking about that and looking. We've looked, for example, at a few of the high schools that are very similar to we are to see what do we have, what don't we have. If we don't have it, do we think it's something worthwhile? You know, so we have started that process, but we don't have the answers yet.
Does are there folks on the STEM Advisory Council that are folks that live in town that work at Merck or any of the, you know, the pharmaceutical companies here? Are we reaching out as well as to the universities to try to tap some of the local talent that possibly can help in any ways?
To some extent, yes. We have had some conversations and exchange of emails with parents, yes. And you're right, we're very fortunate. We have a number of people in that
And a
field.
lot of folks that work.
Right. So if there's anyone who's either watching this or going to be reading the synopsis, honestly, please reach out, because we have a lot of students who would like to have experiences in these areas. So if we haven't found you yet and you think you have something, some way you can help our students, we'd love that.
Great.
Anyone else? Sorry, Jean.
Thank you, Dr. Dolan. The STEM is so exciting. It's almost as if the topic of science is becoming sexy, which is good news for this generation. Technology is permeating everything, we know that. So I'd like to ask you a little bit about the high school enrollment. I was hoping that we would stimulate conversation regarding whether we have enough practical arts and elective opportunities for our future, and also how we see our academic environment changing, if at all, based on our enrollment projections. So the first is the electives and practical arts choices, and the second is the academic environment.
We've actually trying to look at, again, the increase next year is really not that much, and the one after that is gradual. We're actually fortunate, you know, we're having a gradual increase, we're not having an explosion, and yet we're trying to prepare for that because at some point it accumulates.
Right.
So actually what we've been looking at, to add your two questions together, looking at for opportunities perhaps for electives for STEM related. Actually once we gave the technology presentation, last 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, we had feedback from a few parents, and they talked about, you know, other uses of technology and would we be having classes regarding computing itself and other uses. And that's part of what we're looking at to see if some of those might be able to be practical arts and or electives, and also address areas of STEM. That's where some of our has been.
And perhaps when we get our enrollment projection report, we'll have a better understanding of the numbers as they arrive and we can really focus in on those actual figures.
Right, and again, especially in the beginning, I do believe it's going to be gradual enough that, no, it's not going to be a dramatic change. We have to prepare for it, but it's not an onslaught of students.
Right.
It's a gradual increase.
But it will, we will arrive at 2,000 and possibly 2,100 for, we'll be there for a few years.
Mhm.
So it is wise to understand that while we had looked at 1,800 as a large school environment, larger than we were used to, we're going to be bumping that up another 10% or so, and more so. My third question has to do with our climate of respect, and we've spent a lot of public time certainly talking about that, and tremendous effort with the code of conduct and our anti-bullying policy and developing programs within the schools and within the community. And I'm wondering, moving forward, we certainly want to stay on top of that topic. We want to be aware of our climate in each school and in the district. We never really set a benchmark for understanding how we measure up. And I'm wondering if moving forward, we want to have a conversation about surveys and some kind of frequency, or what mechanism, what instrument do you think we might use to understand specifically the impact of what we have done and how our climate is perceived, not only by our students, but perhaps by our teacher, our staff community?
Right.
And then, do we want to have a comparison? Unfortunately, we didn't take a benchmark before we started, but that's okay. We're here now.
And actually, a lot of that work has been started at the school level with the school safety teams.
Yeah.
And the school safety teams also meet a few times during the year to compare. We have allowed them to go and investigate a little bit on their own, but we also bring them back to say, all right, what did we find? What surveys are you considering? What surveys have you already given?
Uh-huh.
What are we finding to find the best? So that they have started that process.
Well, I would, for one, when you are comfortable with having a base of data for us, I think it's very appropriate to share that with us, and so that we can try to understand where our strengths are and what the perception of the climates are. Because certainly there's a culture within each school. A building has its own climate, and then there's a perception of the climate of the district also.
I would like to second that thought and include all constituents, not only students
public.
and parents, not only students and teachers, but parents and the public. And I do appreciate that each school has its own culture and climate, but we also do need to be looking across the district. So.
Anyone else?
With that, I believe we're turning our attention to the budget, and I'll introduce Mr. Yaniro.
Thank you. Good evening. We'll be looking at two programs in our tentative 2012-2013 budget. The first is our athletic program. You'll see that we have 31 sports and 73 teams. These represent teams on the high school and the 8th grade at Edison and Roosevelt. Total participants are 1,693. 40% of our pupil population participates in the sport, and that's a very good number. Looking at our specific sports teams by season, you'll see the fall. Boys cross country, football, field hockey, gymnastics, soccer, girls tennis, volleyball, and 8th grade field hockey. We've noted the level of teams. 3 teams means varsity, JV, and freshman. At the football level, we also have a sophomore, 10th grade team that participates in a few games during the season. And we list the number of coaches. Moving to the winter season, We have basketball, 2 co-ed sports, bowling and ice hockey, swimming, wrestling, track, and 8th grade wrestling. Looking at spring sports, let's have baseball, softball, golf. New team being introduced this year is girls golf, be starting this spring. Lacrosse, boys tennis. The girls tennis is in the fall. It was listed under the fall season. Track and softball and baseball at both Edison and Roosevelt. Obviously, a major part of our athletic program are our athletic fields. We have 11 Board of Education fields. They're virtually used every day by athletic teams, phys ed classes in recess, the Board of Recreation, outside organizations. There's no question our fields are overused due to increased, and getting worse, due to increased participation. Of course, we're very happy that we have increased participation, but it really does cause a real stress on our fields. In fact, it gives our fields really no chance to recover and regenerate. In fact, in many cases, as one team leaves the field, there's another team on the sidelines waiting to use the field. Mrs. Clancy will talk more about this issue in a few minutes. Looking at the athletic budget in comparison with this budget, with the proposed budget and this year's budget. Salaries, these are our coaches, office staff, and trainers, increase at $15,000. Transportation, now these costs, of course, rise as our teams are more and more successful. And as we know, we've had an incredible successful year this year, and we're very happy to provide the additional transportation. Reconditioning of equipment, ongoing every year. Equipment replacement, increase of $8,000. Conferences and training, this is for our coaches and improving the management of our program, and safety issues, increasing $125. Next, supplies, field maintenance, this is lining and preparing our fields for play, a $3,000 increase. And finally, other, these are team physician, dues, officials, and so on, increasing $5,000. Increasing costs, a lot of which is due to increased participation and reflecting our current level of expenditures. The total next year, $1,168,000, represents 1.2% of our total budget. The next program I'd like to look at is transportation. First of all, we contract out all of our routes. We own no buses. We go out to bid for our in-district routes. We use the Union County Educational Services Commission for our special education routes. We find this to be more cost-effective than owning our own buses and hiring our own drivers. We do not offer courtesy transportation, only mandated. That means all grades K-8 pupils who reside more than 2 miles from the school, and high school pupils who reside more than 2.5 miles from the school must be provided with transportation. We do offer subscription busing for non-mandated busing. This is for children who do not qualify for mandated transportation. We offer the transportation on a fee basis on existing routes provided seats are available. Specifically regarding the number of pupils, we have 21 in-district routes serving 492 students. We have 44 routes that transport 94 students to out-of-district special education programs. And we have 3 routes that transport 93 Westfield students to private schools as per state requirements. Total is 679 students are being transported on 68 routes. Looking at the budget, First portion is to and from school. This is in-district transportation, increase $15,000. Special education, transportation increase of $155,000. Non-public, as we mentioned before, we're required to transport pupils, Westfield residents to non-public schools. That's increasing $5,000. Special programs, this represents a lot of school-to-school transportation. For an example, our all-city program, and some field trips, increasing $850. And finally, athletic transportation that we talked about before, increasing, actually I should say $5,000. The total for next year, $2,775,000. That represents 2.9% of our budget. And that concludes the budget portion.
Thank you.
Just a quick question
Sure.
on the last page.
Right.
To the companies we contract with an increase in fuel, I mean, obviously,
Right.
there's been a dramatic increase in fuel prices.
Right.
Is that built in somewhere, or how does that work?
They're allowed to increase the contract up to the CPI, which has been more around 2%.
Right.
And generally, that's what happens. If they decided not to, then we'd have to go out to bid again and most likely get a higher price.
Okay,
So
they're-
they've been basically renewing for the last few years, which has been good.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All right, good report, thank you.
Oh, wait, I need more time. Wait, to think through. So
didn't
for
say again.
the first slide, it's 40% of pupil population.
Right.
What pupil population? Because it's not 40% of 6,300
High
students.
school Roosevelt Edison.
It's the high school plus the 8th grade enrollment.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
1693, a lot of kids participate in multiple sports.
Right, okay. Just didn't hear that.
Vince, when the town or other organizations use our fields, do they rent it? Do they lease it? Is there some?
They pay a fee and they reimburse us for custodial expenses.
Have we thought about limiting that, given the overcrowdedness?
I don't believe so, I'm not sure if we've tried to or not. Something we could consider.
Jenny?
So the transportation budget, it looks like, is increasing about 3%,
Yes,
and the athletic budget just under 4%?
correct.
Okay. I guess the major increase within transportation is, of course, our special education piece. Looked to me like that was about 8%.
The reason for that was under budgeting one of the accounts in special ed transportation.
This year.
Right.
This year's.
Correct.
Under budget in that we had new arrivals that we didn't know about, or we just planned, we had a problem in our planning?
It's just a combination of a number of things. Yeah, it's based on anticipated enrollments next year, based
Okay.
on what we're doing this year.
Okay.
It's basically a combination.
Do you know what the actual experience you're forecasting for 2011 and 12 in special education? Because I still find it misleading that we compare budget to budget when the budget is so far, I mean, we're already have almost a full year worth of experience.
Actually, that's the way we're required to budget by the state in terms of how we report to the state and to the public. That's the requirement. But I know what you're talking about. I mean, and that is the way we budget. We look at our anticipated actual this year, and we budget off of that.
Right. So do you happen to know what the special education actual forecast looks to be for this year? because the increase is, for 2012-13, is likely not $155,000. It's probably some smaller number based upon our current run rate.
Correct. That's correct. Offhand, I don't know.
Okay.
But that's the guidance that you use to project.
Absolutely.
And just certainly to point out, in the past several years, we have paid a little attention to the athletic budget. We have been very sparse in our funding. I'm not surprised that reconditioning equipment and equipment replacement are two major areas where we have to increase our spending next year.
I was just wondering, the transportation for athletics is noted on both presentations, but it's only one cost. It's just that
Yes.
you're dividing
Yeah,
it
right.
up in different ways, and that would,
It's actually
It's-
included in the athletic budget.
it's included in the athletic budget, so that would, the percentage increases would be a bit different if you take that out of
Right.
whichever category you did. You took it out.
But just to try to look at our entire transportation program, I threw it into transportation, right? It isn't in both. Right.
Anyone else?
Nope.
All right. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you, Vince.
And I believe the next presentation has to do with a continuation of last week, when we had a presentation on the condition of the roofs in our buildings. And we had promised at that point that there was more information and more discussion to come. And as promised, we have the architect who's working with our district, George Duthie, who's going to continue the presentation and discussion regarding the roofs.
Well, good evening, everyone, again. It seems like I was just here not that long ago. I would just like to kind of touch upon some of the things that we discussed last time, or last presentation, and do a follow-through and continuation of that conversation. So, $13,600,000, as we know from last time, is the projected estimated cost of the project, the roof replacement project at all of the district buildings. The magnitude of this work, the most feasible way to pay for it, honestly, is a bond issue. So, we've looked at a referendum. There are 5 days during the year when we are permitted to run referendums in the state of New Jersey per law. And we've looked at the September 24th date, it's the fourth Tuesday of the month. And the reason why we're looking at September is it coincides with a sufficient amount of time to prepare the documents and get the project ready so that the work can be done during the summer of 2013. That will require board action to approve the project by March 27th, because leading up to the referendum, there are a number of tasks that must be completed, which will require board action. So, key dates for the project itself.
Yes.
Bidding, next spring, March of 2013. Construction, as I said previously, summer of 2013, with completion by August 30th of 2013. Why now? Deteriorated roofs require attention now. Historically low bond rates, 3% a year, very, very low. Construction costs remain favorable at this time due to the current depressed state of the construction industry. What will it cost? Again, we assume, and we've checked, by the way, Mr. Yannaro's checked with your bond counsel, who has confirmed a 3.00% interest rate. Average assessed value of $182,000. Total amount, $13,600,000, $90 a year per household for a 20-year bond. We've looked at projected energy savings, and our estimate is at least $300,000 per year will be saved just from the insulation that's being placed on the roofs of all of these buildings. You remember, last time we spoke, 471,000 square feet of roofing to be replaced throughout the district in this project. The solar power purchase agreement, PPA to follow completion of the roofing project. Roof-mounted systems on most of the buildings, 985 kilowatts DC power output, 1 million, just under 1.1 megawatts of electricity generated every year, megawatt hours, kilowatt hours, 1.1 megawatt hours, or 1,090,000 kilowatt hours. A PPA term of 15 years, which is the maximum permitted by current regulation. 2 phases of the work with the PPA, both of which will be at no cost to the school district. By the way, those costs are included in the PPA proposal that the district receives, a due diligence phase prior to bidding, and a design and construction phase after the award of the PPA. So the expected range of savings based upon the current market and the foreseeable future, based on a low end of $43,600 a year, up to $65,400 a year. Likewise, over the term of the PPA, $654,000 to $981,000, just under $1 million. Okay?
I'm sorry.
Savings.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, what's a PPA?
Power purchase agreement is a method under the regulations where a property owner, in this case a public entity, can solicit bids, similar to competitive contracting, and those bids will ask different vendors, PPA proposers we call them, to propose putting a system on your roof. Using the revenue that that system produces based on current New Jersey regulations, net metering, which is the sale of electricity that the system produces, and what we call SRECs, Solar Renewable Energy Certificates, to produce revenue that helps to pay for the system and also to provide a source of revenue to the school district. Okay? So that's how they are able to do that at no cost to the school district. Okay? So that is a range of savings. Okay. Solar timeline, bidding February of 2013, installation to take place upon completion of the roof replacement project in the summer of 2013. From October 2013 to January 2014, and with the overall completion of April, there's a period of time for inspections and paperwork and things like that that are a necessary part of putting the solar system online. Okay? So April 2014 for completion of solar. And Edison Turf Field, and I'm going to let Mrs. Clancy speak more about that proposal as shown on the slide. Thank you.
So, I'm sure we have a lot of questions regarding the presentation, but before we move forward, as you can see, there is a slide regarding turf at Edison. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. The Facilities Committee met last Thursday, and we reviewed the implications of the bond referendum. And during this discussion, we also reviewed aspects of the facilities that need work and that realistically could only be funded through a bond. And one item that was raised was the turf field recommendation that the Facilities Committee had made back in September of 2010. Through the review process at that time, we were reminded, as also we talked about a little bit tonight, of the heavy and continuous usage of the fields. And at that time, we discussed our options of increasing maintenance, taking a field out of play for rest and repair, and also turf. We eliminated the first option because with the heavy usage, especially after rainy weather, the fields just quickly deteriorate, and we see that time and time again. The second option was attempted at Tamaqua Field several years ago, and it actually proved to be difficult at that time as well. The district had to close the field for several seasons, so it had to shuffle some sports around, and once it was reopened, immediately due to its constant use and also weather-related, it declined in the quality of playability. So turf fields, after our discussion, we recognize as being a long-range solution to the growing need for fields and multiple sports usage. They require less maintenance, they are not weather-dependent, and they can tolerate the continuous play. Also, by increasing time on another turf field, this would increase the possibility of truly trying to rest one of our other fields because it would give us more opportunity on an additional field. We have had this recommendation sitting on the back burner for about a year and a half. So we felt that it made sense to bring this recommendation forward at this time and just open it up for discussion. It would present us with the opportunity to greatly improve our outdoor facility capabilities and enhance the quality of play for our athletic programs. The facility committee does believe that additional investigation needs to take place regarding turfing by our professionals, and we believe that if we move forward with the recommendation, that it would be best to include the turf fields on the referendum while studies are conducted. We understand that if we accepted a bond resolution for both the roofs and the turf field at the March 27th meeting, we would have the flexibility of conducting the studies through the spring and have until June to make a final determination if we were to move forward with the turf part of the recommendation. So that's how that slide appeared.
Okay. But that was okay. You ready?
So the cost of the turf field is included in the 13.6, or that would be additional?
That would be additional. Our preliminary number looked to be about $1.5 million.
So
That would be an additional,
So the
big
bond would
bond
be
would be
about 15.
George, could you, at our last meeting, you went through the roofs in very good detail. Talked about each one, how much needed work, how much roof was still usable over the next 15 to 20 years. Could you just give us an alternative plan, sort of the pros and cons of an alternative plan, which would look like something like this, if we were to try to allocate funds each year to repair the roofs over time?
Sure. We have active leaks right now in just about all of the buildings. And there are many, many areas of roof, and I think we said last time, that are more than 20 years old, well beyond their useful life. And there's two aspects to the project. The first aspect is fixing temporarily leaks and taking care of wet ceiling tile and finishes right away, and the effort that requires of the school district staff and vendors and financial resources to make those repairs. So it's a daunting task to keep up with the quantity of leaks, and as you all know, we've had some significant rainfall events in the past year. Then, the second aspect, of course, is using limited district dollars, which have, of course, been challenging in the past few years with what's happened to school district funding throughout the state, to try to find some sum of money each year to do a meaningful portion of the roofing work. You will not be able to address even the significantly leaking areas without a significant sum of money. So if it was $1 million a year, and that's assuming you had $1 million a year, you would be doing this project for well over 15 years, most likely. And you may never get caught up, because from year to year, we don't really know what's going to happen to state funding. We don't really know, what other pressures you're going to have on your budget. And we have to remember that the district has other capital projects needs besides roofs that are more sized of magnitude, that they can be more easily managed on a yearly basis in the budget. And those funds, of course, would then be diverted to the roofing. So that's why we're looking at this bond issue, because of the significant magnitude of work that's involved.
So could we, I think the solar kind of, I understand it all, but I think for the audience, it might be helpful to break apart and maybe give some context to, quickly, and maybe, Rich, I'll put you on the
maybe I
spot,
could do that.
to give some context to, we went down a path of solar.
Got it.
We weren't successful for a whole lot of reasons. We then got to the roofs, and then once we have the roofs hopefully done, then why solar becomes back into picture again. I think that would be helpful.
Right, so I'll use approximations. About 2 years ago, we started a solar endeavor. We looked at our roofs. We put out an RFP, which brought in a number of potential solar providers. They toured our roofs. Some of them drew up solar plans for the roofs, and they, I think all were, well, a small group of them I thought were pretty attentive in terms of coming in to talk to us, asking questions, and following up. At the end of that process, we had no proposals in response to the RFP. So nobody was interested in responding or making a proposal to put solar on the roofs. The primary concern there was the fact that the condition of the roofs and the fact that it wouldn't necessarily be economical to a solar provider if they had to put money into the roofs. And at that point, we had been thinking more that it would be a situation where we would get a lower power cost. So we put the RFP out for bid again. We had maintained flexibility in the first round for solar developers to give us a proposal that did allow for roof work, although it wasn't our emphasis. We did make clear in the second round that the RFP afforded solar developers that opportunity. And we had some of the same providers take another look. We had new providers take a look. Again, some providers toured the roofs, drew up plans, and again, we had no proposals to do the work. And the takeaway in talking to the developers was that the likely cost of the roof work was just going to be too significant. Under law, the second time that an RFP fails, you are actually allowed to talk to individual developers. So the process is very regulated, and along the way, everybody gets the same information at the same time. You can't really have one-off conversations. But at the end of the second round of the RFP, we were allowed to engage developers directly, and they spent, one or two of them, I should say, spent even more time, and one in particular spent a lot more time coming in, meeting with the facilities committee. They gave us a proposal on alternative roof structures. There was a foam roof scenario that was sort of a, not an ideal solution, but a potential solution. And what we had come to understand was that we, at that point, had no opportunity for energy savings, but that was okay because we thought we could get a good amount of roof work done. As we got further down the line with that developer, and it was a roof developer working in tandem with a power provider, as we got further down the line, it became apparent that the cost to that provider was making it too uneconomical for them, such that the rate they would charge us for electricity was not only bumping up against what we're paying today, it would probably have to go above what we're paying today, which is not permitted by law. So we found ourselves in the unfortunate situation of roof conditions that didn't allow us to have a power provider come in and put solar panels on the roofs in a manner that was beneficial to them or us. From that, the good news in all of that is that we took away a very thorough understanding of our roofs. But we did feel like we did feel like at that point we ought to do one more deep dive, and we engaged George, who gave us a very thorough presentation in the Facilities Committee and at last week's board meeting, and that's how we got to where we are today. One of the benefits of new roofs would be that we can put power on them. So the power purchase agreement is something that we've talked about as a board a few times in the context of what I just mentioned. So the developers we actually had a power purchase agreement in place that we put out in the RFP. It would obviously be our hope that once the roofs are reconstructed, we are an attractive source of roof space to power providers. That's how we got here.
Yeah, so that was great. So basically, in the presentation that George gave us, we're here talking about roofs and a potential bond to fund the roofs, and then hopefully that's successful, and then we can come back and revisit
Correct.
solar somewhere down the road. Right, okay, so
At
they're
no
not
cost.
related.
Right.
Sorry.
We would explore it at no cost. I think that's important to
And
know.
that would actually
Correct.
be immediately. Once the roofs are done, there's no, once your warranties are confirmed and the roof is checked out, you go. I mean, you can go.
And as
So,
George said last week in response to a question, the roofs will be solar ready.
right.
So can I just ask a question just to make sure I understand?
Please.
So it's not the Facilities Committee's recommendation that we do solar. What we're saying is that this is a potential benefit to doing the roofs right now.
Correct.
Right.
So through our exploration, of the roof work that needed to be done, we really were trying to look at some of the future benefits as far as the savings, energy savings with insulation, how much we're actually losing, as well as then the solar piece too that would, help through our budget to
Right.
find ways of saving money while we're spending money, balance it out.
That's very helpful, thank you. I was confused.
Switch over to the turf field for a second. Maybe Jane can answer this, and maybe even Sandy while she's here. I'd just like to hear some examples of what we'll use the turf field for. Just some different sport, obviously soccer, lacrosse, but I'm just, maybe get a sense of what we're looking at, because there's so many different aspects. I think it'd be helpful to hear that.
I think Sandy would be a great person to
Aye.
talk to.
Only offer it to you to be nice.
The dimension of the field that
Yeah, it
was up on the screen can facilitate field hockey, boys soccer, girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, and, probably a football if we wanted to, paint it for that, but we probably would not.
And you anticipate, obviously the high school, but also the intermediate schools having use for it, or?
Whatever I can
Whatever you
schedule
can
there,
schedule.
I will,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce got you. Jane?
Is there any conversation about the availability of lighting this field for use after dusk?
We have had conversations in the past, and I think we will continue to have conversations regarding turfing as the investigations take place. We really have not come up with any recommendations for that at this point, but it certainly, makes sense, as with everything, to investigate that as well.
I have two questions. If we were to move ahead with including the turf in the bond for the roof, if we move ahead with the bond for the roof, what would that come to per household? The 20-year bond term would be $90 per
It was
household.
an
I think it's
additional
another $10
$10
About
per
9 to 10,
household.
those at 10%,
Yeah.
Okay,
a lower 10%.
okay. And then, was there any talk, if the bond were to be approved and we went with solar, using the savings, the projected energy savings due to the insulation of the roof, and then the projected savings for the solar panels, use those savings to pay down the bond?
We didn't talk specifically about paying down the bonds. We certainly talked about whether it could cover the interest, and that would, paying down could be if it's a permissible use, we could talk about that, and, at that time. Dollars are fungible, so, it certainly could be a good use.
Right, you can always take funds and appropriate it into the debt service budget, thereby in lieu of raising taxes by that
Right,
amount.
right.
So you could take your savings and do that if you wanted to.
Vince, do we have a sense of how our current bonds will be running off over the next 15 years, such that this isn't necessarily
I
a full
looked at
ahead?
that. Yes, we do have a number of bonds that are coming due, are maturing in 5 years or so. And some of it relates to refunding, refinancing and so on. But I do have an email to our bond attorney to take a look at, how we would structure it and what the total cost impact would be, considering some of the issues are maturing fairly
Right.
soon. Right.
Thank you. Jane?
So I guess just a question to that, would we be able to take advantage of the current interest rate on previous bond? Is that what you're saying? in 5 years, or we,
No.
in 5 years, our bonds are?
Well, yeah, some of the, there's about 6 outstanding issues, and some of them are coming due, or actually maturing like in about
To
5
complete-
years or
to-
so.
they will be
Completed.
paid off.
Exactly, that's what I mean by maturing.
Okay.
And, certainly, that should be factored in terms of the total cost impact of the new issue, and it will be. I mean, that's what, these bond attorneys are very good at structuring them, so there's, a minimal impact on taxpayers. But we haven't looked at that yet.
Right. Does that make sense?
Will we have
Yes,
that for
but
next
can
week?
you refinance on
We should, yes.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sorry. Okay.
We'll have that for next week,
I'll-
hopefully.
Yeah, that's the
I'm
hope.
pretty
So,
sure
'cause
we
what
should
we'd
be
like to-
able to have it next
What we'd
week.
like to know, obviously, is if there's an incremental burden in year one, hopefully it, in effect, ratchets down
Right.
when accumulated with the other
Right,
bond
right,
issuances.
Right, so we can look at it over a 15, 20-year period.
Right. To Jane's other question, though, could we refinance the bonds? I know we look at that periodically, given the interest rate environment. My understanding is there needs to be a certain drop in interest rate before you can refinance.
Correct.
We don't meet
Our-
that right now because
right, our
we've
li-
refinanced recently.
Right, our last refinance was at 4%.
Right.
So we'd have to do better than the 3%. You're right, by law, there certainly has to be a certain extent of savings before you can do it.
Right. Anyone else? Jane?
Yeah, so the board has 2 weeks to consider this option.
If we want to stay on a timeline that allows us to do work on the roofs next summer.
And if we want to consider whether or not the turf field is appropriate to fold into this kind of funding.
What we can do is, sort of different pieces. So we need to start at the end of March to do work next summer. But we don't need to submit the actual bond proposal until the end of June. So there'll be preliminary work we do leading up to the submission of the bond. So we have, my understanding is, and you could correct me, Vince, if I'm wrong, we would have any time between when we approve the issuance until we actually initiate the issuance at the end of June to stop the process. And so in the case of the turf field, to take it out of the process. We could continue with the roofs. We wouldn't continue with the field if that's our decision. What this does is allows us that flexibility.
So the approval date hinges on the bidding process for the roofs, which is, what is?
I think George is coming up.
All right, tell us with a little more clarity, why we're under the time crunch and what does it
Okay.
do for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
We've done a detailed timeline, and one of the key dates you have to remember is the Department of Education requires that all projects of this type be submitted.
Okay,
And there is a 90-day window of time that the Department of Education is allowed by law to review a project. It may not take that long, but prudence dictates that we plan for that full 90 days. So we just do the math. Before you can schedule a referendum question through your county clerk of elections, who requires 60 days, well, 55 days actually, to schedule the question prior to the election, we have to have that approval letter in hand from the Department of Education. Therefore, going back from June 26th to March 27th, that's where 90 days puts us in order to be able to get all the paperwork into the Department of Education. So we can submit the projects to the Department of Education, just to let them know we have these potential projects coming down, for the field coming down the road, and we'll get them to review the application. And they will issue the letter, and they will wait, they'll issue the letter, and then if we need to withdraw later on, we can. But that will assure we have that letter in hand by the end of June to get it to the county clerk of elections.
Is that, just to add on that, is that why we're looking at a September bond voting day and not November?
The reason we're looking at September is because of the amount of work that has to be done on the design side and the construction documents and the bidding period. In order to finish that amount of work on 11 buildings, it's the amount of time that's needed to complete all the drawings, all the design work, and get it ready to go to bid by March or February even. So that's what drives the September date, really, more than anything. November would be tight, not impossible, but it would be very difficult to accomplish that much design work in 2 months or 3 months. So that's what drives the September
And
date.
the earlier you go out to bid, the better prices you get. The closer you get to the summer,
Wow.
the higher the prices.
I would be concerned we would then bump the bidding date right into a more busy bidding time for contractors and possibly drive the prices, the bids up, because we're bidding the project a little later. We can try to get out a little bit earlier, get ahead of all the other people who are bidding roofs, and try to take advantage of those contractors who are going to be hungry to get that first shot at the work.
I'm concerned about the date because the last time we floated a bond, we spent months with a bond steering committee that was comprised of parents and people from the community at every school. And we educated them about why we needed to do Lincoln and everything. And we needed to bring the community along with us. And I'm concerned that we get back, September, whatever date we start school on, and we have a few weeks to really get this going. I mean, the parents are not going to want to come to meetings over the summer to hear about the roofs. I guess we could start work in June. We could start work now in the spring, but still people are, I don't know. I think the big push is going to have to come in September
Right.
to get the community to understand, why we need to do this. And I think we're giving ourselves 3 weeks to do that. Now, you just opened a little window there by saying that it could possibly be done in November. And maybe that's something we should think about, because I just feel like to put a community steering committee together and to get people behind it and educated and up to speed on everything we're doing is going to take some time. The other thing I think we...
Okay, no, I was just saying, it's a good point. I think the message is probably simpler around roofs than it was around Lincoln School. So, our roofs are failing. There's a cost associated with repairing 11 roofs, and we can explain why we don't have the money each year to do it. And that's a simpler message than why we brought kindergartens together in one location and just all of the ancillary issues that go with that. I appreciate your point, though. And I do think we can start in June. I think for all practical purposes, we've started. I've started to get questions about why are we doing a bond. People I don't know have called me and asked based on articles in the paper with good questions. So.
And then the other thing I think is, I think that we should meet with our legislators and discuss with them the executive order that Governor Christie put forth to take away the 40% that we could apply to the state for. Because I think that, these are our roofs. It's fairly important. It's not just something, that we want. It's something we actually need, and I think we should meet with them so that they understand, that, or we should write him a letter, or we should reach out and talk to the state
Absolutely.
government about that.
That's good.
And just to that point, I think we had talked a little bit about that in facilities, and if that were the case and funding were to change and the 40% were to come back into the picture, there would be time for us to be able to incorporate that into moving forward?
Provided the funding became available prior to that June 26th. The June 26th date is the date you set the amount and the scope of the bond issue, and after that, you can't withdraw it.
Okay. So we should meet with
We
them
better
soon.
meet soon.
There we go. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'd like to ask you, what was the nature of the public questions that arrived?
Oh, they were good questions. So they were a sort of a why now question. How could it possibly be that we need 11 new roofs? They were the why not do this? Why can't you find the money elsewhere? So cut things out of the budget to pay for the roofs. That was probably the biggest nature of the question.
And I should point out that it's not every roof at every building.
Right.
There are still a number of roofs that are in fairly good condition, under warranty, and that it's, we're only doing the roofs that are badly in need of replacement.
What's the percentage roughly of the roofs we're replacing?
George here?
I believe we're touching every
Oh,
roof.
right.
We are, but
Not
not
every
the whole.
section, not every section.
Right, not every section.
I would say it's higher than that.
I thought it was about 80.
And I'm gonna work from memory now, but you have over 500. You have
421,000 square feet.
500, how much?
421,706.
That's 471,000 what we're replacing.
Oh, that's
And I think
replacement.
you have somewhere around 550,000 square feet of roof. So it's 80%, 85%.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it's, but you do have roofs that are still under warranty and in good condition.
So for next week, I believe we should see some compelling public facts that we need to understand in order to communicate with the public about why now, why this, why fund it in this manner, and frequently asked questions. There's a very short time frame, and we're all going to have to scramble with a communication plan if we're going to, if we choose to adopt this suggestion, if we think it's appropriate to move forward. I think we should try to understand the appropriateness of the argument and the nature of it, and if it seems a reasonable approach for the public.
Makes sense. Anyone else? All right, thank you. That concludes superintendent report. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to go back to the first superintendent report.
Please.
Within the superintendent report section. I just wanted to thank Dr. Dolan and the district staff for putting together that presentation. I was very excited to see all of the things that were being done to plan for the high school enrollment. And while we can all think of other things that could be done, you've really been working hard to look at the big picture. And I also think the STEM initiative and the videos that were shown really do show the excitement about this initiative and where the district is going. So I just wanted to add that.
All right. I'd ask the board approve the minutes of the board meeting held on February 28th, 2012, and the private minutes of February 28th, 2012.
Second.
Questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm just going to abstain. Just
One
wasn't at
abstention.
that meeting. So.
Noted. Personnel, Jane.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to ask for the board's approval of personnel items number 1 through 9.
Second.
Questions?
Questions, discussion? All right, seeing no one, Vince?
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mr. Matesic?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Mrs. Olick?
Yes.
All right, facilities report. Jane?
Just a quick note, I had mentioned last week after the presentation regarding the fitness center that we would bring the discussion regarding a contribution from the board to facilities and finance, and we can talk about that when we get to finance, because there is a item under that regarding the fitness center.
Sure. Anyone else? Anything else? Facilities?
No,
No?
sorry.
All right.
Not feeling well.
Long-range planning, Jenny.
I'm sorry to report that the meeting that I had announced on March 12th will not take place. Our consultant is still in the midst of collecting personal interview data with all principals at the secondary level, and so the committee will wait at least another week to try to understand the implications of the interviews on the enrollment data that has already been collected. And I'm hopeful that we can fit a meeting in possibly during the week. I understand we may be able to get a daytime meeting together, so I will speak to the participants. Don't want to wait too long.
Thank you. Policies, Roseanne.
I'd like to move that the board affirm the superintendent's decision on HIB 12E14 for the reasons set forth therein.
Second.
Ms. Kirstow?
Yes.
Mrs. Olig?
Yes.
Mr. Matresic?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
All right, curriculum, instruction, and programs, Ann.
It was an ant.
There's an anti-tack over here on the side of the town.
It was over here earlier.
The curriculum committee is meeting Thursday.
All right, thank you. Finance, I'd ask the board to consider finance resolutions 1 through 8. And I would note that the revised wording that you each have on finance motions 3 and 6. And,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, Ann.
I do have a question. So, the board, we are giving $50,000.
Revised word.
Perhaps it would help to read the
Sure,
Okay.
revision, the
Ms. Justin.
addendum.
The board.
sure.
It's partially funded.
So the one that's causing confusion is finance motion number 3, which as revised reads, approve an appropriation of $50,000 from the Westfield Board of Education to partially fund the purchase of equipment at the Westfield High School Fitness Center. And this has to do with the fitness center project we've been speaking about over the past several weeks. There was a fundraising initiative by private citizens and fundraising groups who have participated in fundraisers for the school before. And the Board of Education is contributing to that project for several reasons. It is a project that, it's a larger project. It's not of the normal magnitude of a project that's donated to the school by user groups. It's a project that will ultimately impact all our students and certainly immediately impacts all our students in the high school by replacing equipment, as we all saw, which was quite outdated, as we saw in last week's presentation. Sandy is here tonight again. If there are specific questions on the project, that would be appropriate to do that now.
So my question is, are we giving them money or are they giving us money? Like, who owns the equipment?
The equipment will be donated to the district, the Westfield Board of Education. We'll own it and control it.
So the original resolution was written incorrectly.
Okay, all right. Great.
Thank you.
Number 2, I just want to take a moment and once again thank all the members of the Technology Committee for all their hard work, specifically Brian Walker, who did all of the real legwork that has gotten us to this point to set up our wireless network. And I want to thank you very much for all your hard work specifically. And this is very, very exciting. This was a long time coming, and I think this is just the beginning of really great, great stuff. So thank you, everyone.
Other comments or questions? All right.
Mr. Mattesik?
Yes.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kirstow?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Mrs. Olig?
Yes.
All right. I would ask the board to note the notes for the record. And with that, we'll move to legislation.
This committee, we need to meet. So,
Yes, we do.
so after the meeting, we can maybe get our calendars together.
Sounds.
Thank you. Unfinished business? New business? Ad hoc committee reports?
I'll just add that we're meeting next Wednesday. The Technology Committee will continue meeting, even though we've begun our effort. This is just the beginning, and we have a lot of exciting things to continue working on. So we'll be meeting next Wednesday morning.
Any other?
Yes, so this morning, the negotiations committee met with our newly appointed health broker, G.R. Murray, and needless to say, there's a lot of education that we need to do regarding, number one, the changing landscape in the health benefits in New Jersey for public employees, as well as the impact that is having on alternative plan designs that we've had in the district. So this will be an ongoing process, and we will bring our learnings to the broader board in private session as it warrants in our path to negotiate with our bargaining units.
Thank you. Any other reports? Jane?
I have a liaison report from the Rec Commission. I attended the meeting last night. I guess the big news, first pool registration has begun, so if you're a member of Memorial Pool, get registered. They've done so many great things there. It really is an incredible facility. And then big news from Dan Duffy, who is from the Westfield Baseball League. Gumpert Field is under some major renovation and will be a state-of-the-art facility, probably by opening day for baseball, which I believe is April 14th. They have taken out trees and expanded Gumpert 1, and they're putting in new mounds and batter boxes, and it's really going to be extraordinary. I've had 5 boys play on that field, and I'm sorry to say I don't have one young enough to be playing there because evidently the scoreboards will be working. So, I think I will stop by and see a game because that's exciting news. So kudos to the Baseball League and working with the Rec Commission and the DPW, and they've all been working really hard to get this moving and get it done, and I think it's going to be great. So, that's about it.
Thank you. Jane?
I attended 2 meetings last Wednesday. Garden State Coalition of Schools, Board of Trustees meeting. We heard a presentation from Peter Schulman, Department of Education Chief Talent Officer. If you have been reading, there are 4, I think, new categories of resources within the Department of Education, and talent department is one of them. The conversation was about the teacher evaluation plan, and I would like to put notes together for you, as it is too complex to discuss in a very quiet way here. And I've also asked Dr. Dolan to consider an appropriate time to update the board in a very more specific way about the district's activity in response to the requirement to evaluate and plan for a new evaluation system, new teacher evaluation system. And then last Wednesday evening, I attended the Union County Ed Services Commission board meeting, at which time we heard a budget presentation given by the superintendent. The information there was that tuition for Union County Ed Services Commission schools would increase at about 2% to match the 2% cap in districts. That's about it.
All right. Thank you. Any others? Okay, I would then recognize the public for questions and/or comments. Seeing no one come to the podium, I'd ask the board to approve the following resolutions. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing personnel, litigation, and negotiations. And be it further resolved that any discussions held by the board, which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll second Vince.
Second. Thank you. Anyone opposed? No. Meeting adjourned.